What if the most dangerous man in the room looked like the least? What if power didn't roar but whispered? Modern culture teaches you to posture, to flex, to demand attention. Social media rewards the loudest cry, the boldest claim, the shiniest display. Yet in every empire, in every era, the man who truly ruled the game was not the one surrounded by applause, but the one dismissed as harmless, underestimated, ignored. He knew something you forgot. Power is not always worn. Sometimes it hides in plain sight. Looking harmless is not weakness, it is camouflage. They won't strike you if they think you're soft. They won't watch you if they think you're irrelevant. And while their eyes are fixed on louder men, you move, undetected, uninterrupted, unchallenged. There is a quote Machiavelli once placed like a dagger between ribs. The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves. But what if you appeared to be neither? What if you looked like prey until the moment you weren't? In Renaissance courts, the most feared weren't the men dressed in gold. They were the ones in simple robes, standing in the back, saying little, learning much. You never noticed them until your influence crumbled, and by then it was too late. Their blade was already pressed against your legacy. This is the ancient dance of power, not to be seen as strong, but to be misread as weak. In today's world, the trap is reversed. Young men are taught to show their power, to speak their truth, to be seen. They want to be lions, and so they roar too soon. They reveal their weapons, they reveal their wants, and in doing so, they give away the very thing that could have made them untouchable, their mystery. A man who looks harmless is given access. He is invited into rooms where stronger men are barred. He is trusted, he is overlooked, and in that blind spot, he sharpens his tools. He maps the room, he studies the flaws in everyone else's armor. Why? Because when you are underestimated, you are unguarded. Let them sleep on you. Let them believe you're not a threat. Let them hand you their secrets, their blueprints, their weaknesses. Smile, nod, stay quiet, and while they laugh, you prepare. There is no sharper edge than invisibility. The loud man must prove himself. The underestimated man needs only wait. This is not cowardice, this is chess. And in chess, the pawn reaches the other side of the board and becomes anything he wants. Now consider your life. How often have you craved to be seen, to be recognized, to be validated? That desire, innocent as it may seem, is a liability. Every time you demand acknowledgement, you reveal a pressure point. Every time you boast, you leave a footprint. The man who needs to be seen is already compromised, but the one who plays dumb, who plays weak, who plays nice, he is building, he is hunting, and no one sees him coming. There is a scene I want you to picture. A council room filled with war generals. Maps are spread across the table. One man speaks the loudest, pounding his fist, arguing strategy, claiming leadership. Another nods silently in the corner. He says little, he agrees often, he appears deferential, but when the war comes, it is the quiet man whose troops are already positioned. It is the quiet man whose spies already know the enemy's weakness. It is the quiet man whose blade meets flesh before dawn breaks, because power doesn't shout, it calculates. Looking harmless is not a mask, it is a mirror. People see in you what they expect, and if they expect nothing, they offer everything. This is how empires are seized. This is how kings are made in silence. Some will say, but won't I lose respect? Won't people walk over me if I look weak? No, only if you are weak. Looking harmless is not about being spineless, it's about being strategic. It's not submission, it's restraint. It's not fear, it's delay. You don't rush the kill when your prey hasn't even sensed the trap. You wait, you let them walk deeper, you let them feel safe. Then you strike, when they least expect it, and most deserve it. Remember, the snake that hisses draws attention. The one that stays still bites deeper. We live in a world obsessed with performance, but the greatest moves in power are not broadcast. They are whispered, hidden, delayed, disguised. Ask yourself, have you been loud because you're strong or because you're insecure? Have you tried to look powerful or be powerful? Machiavelli would have told you this. It is far better to be feared than loved, but only after you've disarmed them with charm, only after they've lowered their guard, only after they've handed you the keys. And how do you get the keys? You look harmless. The world rewards predators who look like pets. It's a paradox most men never grasp. When you look like a threat, the gates close. But when you appear docile, when you dress yourself in softness, the gates open wide. You are let in, welcomed, disarmed. And it is from within the gates, not outside them, that the real conquest begins. The modern man seeks strength in the form of noise. He flaunts his ambition. He posts his plans. He narrates his every move like a public performance. But in doing so, he becomes predictable. And predictable men are easy to cage. You must understand this deeply. A man without mystique is a man without leverage. If they know your next move, they can block it. If they know your hunger, they can bait you. If they know your limits, they can break you. But if they misjudge you, if they think you're meek, unfocused, simple, then you hold all the cards, because a man who appears harmless controls the frame. He never enters the room as a rival. He enters as a bystander, not the opponent, the observer. He is not the threat until he's the consequence. There's an elegance to this approach, a quiet, ruthless elegance, because in that moment, when your adversaries discover they were wrong about you, it's already too late. The pieces have moved, the deals have closed, the locks have turned, and you have already won. Let me give you a mirror. You walk into a room full of dominant energy, executives, leaders, loud men in expensive suits. You don't posture, you don't match their bravado. You underplay, you observe, you make them comfortable, you ask questions, you laugh at their jokes. But behind the ease is calculation. You're noting who seeks attention, who's insecure, who talks too much, who interrupts, who's lying. You're not competing for the room, you're claiming it silently. And when the moment comes to move, no one resists. Why would they? You were never a threat until now. This is the art of veiled intent, the weapon of those who don't need validation. Because real power, enduring, strategic power is built in shadows. It is layered, deliberate, and above all, unseen. The man who looks harmless gets close, closer than anyone would ever allow a declared enemy. He becomes the confidant, the friend, the neutral party. But proximity breeds opportunity. And opportunity, in the hands of the prepared, becomes takeover. Look at history, not the loud kings, the clever advisors, the ones who whispered in the ear of power, the ones who had no throne, yet controlled the kingdom. Cardinal Richelieu, Chanakya, Metternich, they weren't feared because of brute strength. They were feared because of their silence, their restraint, their ability to smile while they moved pieces across the board. Modern men confuse harmlessness with helplessness. But Machiavelli knew better. A prince must be a fox, he said, to recognize traps. But what he left unsaid is even sharper. The fox that pretends to be a sheep lives longest. Why? Because sheep don't threaten, sheep don't draw suspicion, and a fox in sheep's clothing can walk straight into the den. You must decide, do you want to be impressive or do you want to be effective? Impressive men collect claps, effective men collect kingdoms. Every time you open your mouth to prove yourself, you lose ground. Every time you flex to gain approval, you give away your intent. And every time you show your cards, you teach your enemies how to beat you. The man who looks harmless, he teaches nothing. He reveals nothing. He keeps the world guessing. And that uncertainty is power. There is a subtle shift that happens when people can't read you. They start filling in the blanks. They project softness, safety, simplicity. But you are none of those things. You are the quiet architect behind the collapse, the hand behind the throne, the knife they didn't see coming. You do not need to convince the world you are dangerous. You only need to let them forget and then remind them when it counts. They won't guard themselves against what they don't fear. That is the brutal elegance of this strategy. You do not need to overpower them. You need only to be invisible until the exact moment your presence becomes irreversible. This is not just about blending in. It's about designing your image so carefully that they never even realize they're being studied, sized up, slowly surrounded. There is no defense against the man who never declared war. You must begin to understand the emotional psychology of perception. Human beings assess threat, not just by action, but by posture, tone, confidence, contrast. When you walk into a room wearing humility like a cloak, they relax. When you let them speak first, they believe they're in charge. When you smile and nod, they project simplicity onto you. They misread you, they stop preparing, and that is the beginning of your rise. Because when someone sees you as small, you gain one gift above all. They speak freely around you. They reveal motives. They unveil tensions. They slip. The truth pours out in your presence because you've convinced them that your eyes hold no sharpness, that your ears are safe, that your memory is dull. But every harmless man has a ledger, and every betrayal, every weakness, every contradiction they drop in your presence is written down patiently, ruthlessly, not to be used in anger, but in precision when it matters. And when that moment comes, they won't even remember what they told you. That is the power of silence. It makes people loud. Let's step into another scene. Imagine a man walking beside two titans of industry. One boasts, the other brags. They speak of mergers, of dominance, of rising to the top. And this third man, unassuming, polite, even slightly amused, simply listens, takes note, offers nothing. Weeks later, the market shifts. One titan falls, the other is exposed, and the man who said nothing acquires both. Because words are cheap, but leverage, earned quietly, is priceless. Here is where most men fail. They want recognition too early. They confuse presence with power. They want to be feared before they are ready, and in doing so, they reveal themselves too soon. The man who looks harmless waits, not out of fear, but out of control. Control is not about domination, it's about timing. If you look too strong, you invite resistance. If you look too weak, you invite disrespect. But if you look harmless, just enough to be overlooked, but not enough to be dismissed, you position yourself in the perfect zone of influence. You are allowed near the crown. You are allowed into closed rooms. You are allowed into trust. And every time you walk out with more than you entered with. This isn't cowardice. This is a weaponized self-image. It is restraint sharpened to a blade. Because you have understood what few dare to accept, that the perception of power can be more useful than power itself. Let others fight for the spotlight. Let others announce their plans, their wins, their strength. You hide your hand until showing it ends the game. A harmless man can walk through walls that armored men cannot. He can hear whispers denied to warriors. He can change outcomes without ever being seen as the cause. He does not chase glory, he chooses legacy. And legacy is built not by the man who roars, but by the man who calculates in silence, waits in stillness, and moves only when every piece is his to command. Do not forget, lions may rule the savannah, but it is the spider that spins webs around kings. There comes a moment in every rise where the game flips and the harmless man reveals the edge. That moment is never loud, never announced. It arrives like dusk, quiet, certain, irreversible. The world expects transformation to look dramatic. A man rising from obscurity must explode onto the scene. Right, but that's fiction. In reality, power does not enter with noise. It replaces what was once there, subtly, efficiently, absolutely. And by the time they realize the harmless man was never harmless, he is already in command. This is the turning point you must prepare for. The pivot from invisible to undeniable, because the man who looks harmless cannot stay there forever. The entire strategy, the entire silence, the entire restraint is a preparation for that one clean move, the reveal, the moment you allow them to see what was hidden all along. It's not the reveal that wins the war, it's the patience that made it possible. Understand this, predators don't reveal their teeth unless the bite is guaranteed. And Machiavelli would remind you, the greatest power is not in the strike, but in the fact that you could have struck at any moment and didn't. That uncertainty will haunt them more than any wound ever could. When they finally feel your presence, when your influence becomes undeniable, when they realize you've outmaneuvered them, they will look back and wonder when it began. They will replay conversations, question alliances, doubt memories, and in doing so, they will weaken themselves even further, because confusion is a silent weapon. And you never argued, never protested, never warned. You just moved. Clean, surgical, without explanation. Because real power needs no announcement. The harmless image begins to fracture. Your once soft tone is now heard as deliberate. Your silence, no longer passive but piercing. They re-evaluate you, they reframe you. But it's too late. The shift has occurred. This is the moment Machiavelli spoke of when he wrote, "It is not titles that honor men, but men that honor titles." You were never seeking a crown. You were becoming the kind of man that makes the crown mean something simply by wearing it. The man who looked harmless becomes the one they can't predict, can't read, can't discredit. And in that unreadability lies your final advantage, because when they don't know what you want, they cannot stop you. When they don't know what you feel, they cannot manipulate you. When they don't know who you are, they cannot destroy you. They may try, they will scramble, they will gossip, they will throw labels at you, cold, arrogant, changed, but you haven't changed, you've simply arrived. The wolf doesn't explain why it no longer runs with the sheep, it just stops pretending. This is the metamorphosis, and if you've executed correctly, it won't even require conflict. They will step aside without knowing why. They will make space for you without understanding what moved them. Because the presence of quiet authority, the kind built in shadow, the kind uncorrupted by applause, is felt before it is understood. And once they do understand, they fear it. Not because you're loud, not because you're cruel, but because you are already here, and they never saw it. You must ask yourself, are you prepared for that moment? Are you prepared to become the man they never planned for? Because once the mask drops, there is no return to innocence. You will no longer be invited, you will be watched. You will no longer be doubted, you will be challenged. You will no longer be overlooked, you will be a threat. But that is the cost of emergence. The harmless man becomes the storm. Now the world begins to whisper your name, but with it comes suspicion. You were once the quiet one, the agreeable one, the one who never imposed. But suddenly, decisions bend around you. Conversations pause when you enter. Alliances shift, subtly, irreversibly. And those who once overlooked you begin to wonder, how did this happen? They never saw your steps because they never thought you were playing. This is the reward of restraint. You move without detection. You rise without resistance. And when they finally notice, their minds scramble to construct a story, but the facts no longer match the myth. The harmless man they trusted now sits at the head of the table, unmoved, unraidable. Here is where the weak unravel. They feel the eyes on them and crave explanation. They want to justify their rise, to ease the discomfort of others. But you do not explain power. You embody it, because if they now fear you, good, let them. Fear creates distance. Distance creates control, and control is what they lost the moment they misread you. The truly dangerous man is not the one who commands fear from the start. It is the one who earns it after you've already let him close. Think of how the spider works, not with noise, not with violence, but with placement, with patience, with silence. The web is spun slowly, each thread positioned where no one looks, until one morning, it's everywhere. That is your rise. You didn't charge the throne, you replaced the foundation, quietly, brick by brick, until the crown meant less than your presence. There is an art to this phase of power. You do not gloat, you do not warn, you do not shift your rhythm. You remain controlled, understated. You let the myth form around you, because mystery, once earned, becomes its own weapon. They will project their fears, they will whisper about your motives, they will second-guess their every move near you. Good, let the fog work for you. You don't owe clarity to those who never paid you respect. Remember, a lion announces his strength, a phantom makes the kingdom paranoid. At this stage, your silence becomes heavier, not because you lack words, but because you know they hold weight now. When you speak, people measure it. When you move, people interpret it. Even inaction becomes an event. You must wield this carefully, because a man with presence who lacks discipline becomes dangerous to himself. But you've been tempered in silence. You've trained for this. Let others spin in circles trying to understand you. Your job is not to be understood. It is to remain unshakable. This is the quiet tyranny of presence, and with it comes an entirely new challenge: isolation. The harmless man was surrounded, trusted, welcomed, but the powerful man is watched, judged, feared. You must be prepared to walk alone now. That is the trade-off. You are no longer part of the crowd. You are the axis around which they orbit, not because you asked, but because you earned it. And so a new form of silence must rise in you, not the silence of strategy, but the silence of stability, of enduring leadership, of cool indifference to praise and attack alike. Let them adore you, let them resent you, neither matters, because they can no longer move without considering you, and that is power. Now the game is no longer about survival, it's about governance. You have shifted from shadow to structure, from the man behind the scenes to the force that bends scenes around him. And yet the most brilliant part of it all is that you still appear unthreatening to those who are too late to recalibrate. Let them cling to the version of you they once knew. Let them trust the memory, not the current. Because the more they underestimate what you've become, the less they'll be prepared for what you'll do next. You must understand. Power, when earned through silence, carries a different weight. It isn't begged for. It isn't voted on. It isn't even seized. It's absorbed, slowly, naturally, unstoppably. And that absorption, that quiet consolidation of control, is what makes you untouchable. Now your influence stretches beyond presence. You are not just in the room. You are the room's tension, its pause, its undertone. Others speak more carefully when you're near. Their sentences shorten. Their gaze checks your reaction. And you say nothing. You've become what every strategist dreams of, a mirror that reflects their insecurity back at them, not through anger, not through showmanship, but through a level of composure so unnatural to the frantic modern world, it feels divine. You've stopped chasing outcomes. Now outcomes revolve around your motion. When you speak, it feels like prophecy. When you act, it feels like a shift in weather, because you built this entire ascent on one sacred principle: never let them see it coming. From day one, you mastered the art of concealment. You wore softness as armor, agreement as disguise. You let them assume, let them talk, let them declare themselves. You allowed their confidence to reveal the cracks. And when the time came, you didn't roar, you didn't flex, you didn't fight, you executed. Silently, precisely, like thunder, arriving only after the lightning has already split the sky. This is the end of the harmless image, but it is not the end of the strategy, because you must never fully reveal yourself. Not even now. Let mystery remain, let silence echo, because the man who is fully known can be fully targeted, but the man they still don't understand remains a question, and a question is more dangerous than an enemy. So, to the one listening, the one who has walked this path, or is ready to, don't apologize for being misunderstood. Don't explain your restraint. Don't clarify your movements. Your quiet has already spoken louder than their noise ever could. You are not harmless. You are not loud. You are something far more dangerous. You are unreadable. And that is the final move. If you've made it this far, it means a part of you has already awakened. A part of you that no longer needs to be seen, to be applauded, or to be understood. A part of you that chooses power over performance, silence over spectacle. Now tell me in the comments, are you ready to be underestimated on purpose? Are you willing to walk through the world unannounced, unlabeled, until the day they realize it was all part of the design? If this message struck something in you, if it made you remember what you've always been capable of, write it below. I was never harmless. Let's see how many are ready to rise unseen. And don't stop here. The next lesson is waiting for you. Much deeper, much sharper. See you there.